Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Boyd Bennett, and I'm here to bring you the funniest man in America, Foster Brooks.
That's a lot of crap.
No, that isn't. You're the funniest man in America.
Boyd, we've been together now for ever since Derby. And
Yes,
I didn't, well, incidentally, you know, my father used to race horses.
He did?
Yeah, until his legs got tired. But anyway, I wanted to ask you something I intended to ask you before. How is your lovely wife?
Oh, Foster, my wife is an angel.
You're very lucky. Mine's still alive.
Listen, Foster, there's a rumor going around that I want to get your personal comment on.
Yeah.
I've heard that you're planning on retiring.
Retiring?
Yeah.
Me retiring is like leaving the porch light on for Jimmy Hoffa.
Oh. I'm going to leave it to you, Foster, to tell these people exactly how you feel.
I don't know how big it is. You know, I want to tell you something, and this is something you married folks ought to do too, because everywhere my wife and I go, we always hold hands, because if I let it go, she'll start shopping somewhere. I went into a bar room the other day, and the bartender says, "Can I help you?" I said, "Yeah, I want a drink." And he said, "I'm sorry, I'm afraid I better not. I could lose my license if I gave you a drink, because you look like you've had a little too much already." And I said, "Oh, I don't think so." And I looked over by the door and I said, I can prove I'm not drunk." He said, "How?" I said, "By that one-eyed cat coming into the door." He said, Now I know you're drunk, because that cat's going out the door." When I got married, I was working in San Francisco, and we were going my wife and I were going to get married in Oakland, California, across the bay there. So the boss said, "I'd let you go just long enough to get married, but you got to get back here right away." So I rented a helicopter, and we got married, and I got the helicopter. My wife was afraid to fly, so the first night we were married, my wife came across on a boat, and a couple of times in the back seat of the car, if I remember correctly. Incidentally, I found out something that's very important to me, especially at my age. You can buy seniors condoms now, and you get a year's supply with one to a package. They start at 2 inches long, and you can get them bigger than that, but they're equipped with suspenders and Velcro. I don't like to brag, but I'm kind of a pretty good cook. And I like leg of lamb, and I have a special way to cook a leg of lamb, and that is to take a quart of gin and put it in with the lamb. Then you add some other ingredient, and then you add a pint of bourbon. And then you add another ingredient, and then some vodka, and stir it all up and marinate it, and cook the lamb in it. Now, the lamb isn't very good, but the gravy won first prize at the fair this year. I have a brother-in-law that's last June he figured he better start exercising a little bit. Oh, quit that. I think I'm drunk all the time. And he started walking. Last June he started walking 10 miles a day, and we have no idea where he is. And I might say, as the captain of the Hindenburg said, is it hot in here or is it just me? I was in a doctor's office one day a couple of weeks ago, and a fellow came in, and I could hear him talking, and he told the doctor that he was not as romantically inclined as he would like to be, and the doctor said, well, for $1,000 I can make you available once a month, and for $10,000 I can make you available 3 times a month. And for $25,000, I can make you available for anytime you felt like it. The guy said, well, that's a lot of money to lay out right now, so I think I'll go home and discuss it with my wife. He did, and he came back, and the doctor said, well, what'd you decide? He said, we're going to redo the kitchen. I went home the other night and my wife was packing her bag. I said, what are you doing that for? She said, I'm leaving you. I said, is there someone else? And she said, oh, there's got to be. You know, I've decided there's one benefit of dating a homeless woman. When the evening is over, you can just leave her where she is. I went to the hospital to see my mother-in-law recently, and the nurse told me I was on the wrong floor. And I said, don't you know who I am? And she said, well, if you don't know who you are, I'd see the girl down there, the nurse down there with the clipboard. I was riding in a golf cart one day with my friend Bob Hope. And Bob is very hard of hearing and a little too proud to wear a hearing aid. And we discussed them for a few minutes, and Bob said, oh, I think those hearing aids are a pain in the you-know-what. I said, are you sure you're putting them in the right place? I asked my wife recently, I said, if I didn't have any money at all, would you still love me? She said, well, yes, I'd miss you, but I was downtown not long ago, and I called my wife up. I said, I just happened to think, you remember the last time we had sex? And she said, who is this? I remember years ago, I was in a restaurant, and a little sign up on the wall said, ham sandwich 25 cents. And so I ordered one, and she brought it, and in the meantime, I saw another sign that said pie a la mode, 25 cents. And I said to the young lady, can you do me a favor? She said, if I can, yes, I'll be happy to. And I said, you trade me this ham sandwich for the pie a la mode? It's both the same price. She said, sure, be glad to. So she took the ham sandwich and gave me pie a la mode. And I ate it and started walking out the store. She said, Mr. Brooke. I said, yes. She said, did you forget something? I said, I don't think so. She said, well, you didn't pay me for the pie a la mode. I said, well, I gave you the ham sandwich for the pie a la mode. She said, well, you didn't pay me for the ham sandwich either. I said, well, why should I? I didn't eat it. It's nice to be here in town like this. But the hotel, there's something I'd like to. I'm going to complain to the management about. I discovered that the bath towels are so thick I can't even get them in my suitcase. I was celebrating my 82nd birthday a couple of weeks ago, and my family thought they'd try to do something nice for me. And so they got a hold of a young girl, about 22, beautiful, blonde, and sent her up to my hotel room. And she knocked on the door. I opened it. I said, hello. She said, hi, how are you? How are you? I said, pretty good. She said, I'm here to give you super sex. I said, okay, I'll take your soup. I was standing out, and in nicer hotels, a maid come by at night and says, would you like to get turned down? And would you like to have the bed turned down for the night? And one night I was at hotel here in New Albany. And I was standing out in front of my door, and the maid came up to me and said, excuse me, sir, would you like to be turned down? I said, no, I'd rather be turned on. My wife just turned me down. That's what I'm out here in the hall for. Excuse me, sir, would you please move your head to one side or the other? The glare from the spotlight hits your head and bounces right in my eye, and I can't see anything. Oh, I see. I thought for a minute you were sitting upside down. Something has entered my mind. If Dr. Kevorkian assists you in attempting suicide and it fails, can you sue him for malpractice? You never know what to expect when you walk out on the stage like I did. Only I didn't walk, did I? And then sat down, huh? The other night I walked out on the stage, and there was a lady and a man sitting right in front of me, and he slid under the table. And I said, excuse me, madam, but your husband just slid under the table. She said, my husband just walked in the front door. I was over in Scotland one time, and I was playing golf, and suddenly it started snowing. And I mentioned, isn't this rather strange that this would snow at the time of the year? And the caddy said, no, a couple of weeks ago the ground was covered with snow, but we still played. I said, did you paint the balls red? He said, no, we just wore heavier clothing. There was a lady driving a car, station wagon one day, and she had about 9 or 10 kiddos in it, and she ran a stop sign and almost hit a man crossing the street, and the man hollered to her, don't you know when to stop? She said, they're not all mine. A woman went into the hotel and she called downstairs and she said, I got a leak in my bathtub. He said, go ahead, you're paying enough for the room. Hey, wait, I've been catching something here for some time. I've been noticing something. Oh, is that Dolly Parton out in the audience? No. Oh, excuse me. That's just two bald-headed guys sitting too close together. I remember when I was just a little boy, and I'd see my mother at the sink pulling the feathers off of the chicken that we were going to have that night for dinner, and she gets all the feathers off, but there's little bitty short hairs, you know, that are still on the chicken skin, and so she would take my dad's razor and run it over the chicken, and it did a real good job. And I told my wife about it, and she fixed a chicken one day, and she remembered what I told her about what my mother did, and she went upstairs and she got my, we don't have an upstairs. She went in the bathroom and got my Schick electric razor, and she ran it over the bird, ran it over her bird, and it worked so well. She wrote a letter to the Schick Electric Razor Company, and told them what she had done, and they sent her a check for $100, and said from now on we're going to have 3 razors on the market. We're going to have a man Schick and a lady Schick and a chicken Schick. My wife and I were traveling down the New York State highway, and we came to a toll booth, and I discovered I didn't have any money. And my wife said, well, I don't have any bra on. Maybe if I'd show him these, he might let us through. So we got up to the man, and I told him I didn't have any money. My wife had put her skirt or dress up or sweater and said, could we get through with these? He said, if you can get them in that little slot over there, lady, and make that gate go up, you can go right on through. On down the road we went, and pretty soon we came to another toll gate. And my wife looked at me and said, this time it's your turn. My wife asked me to go to the store and get her a dozen eggs, and I did. When I got home, by golly, every one of them had a pair of pantyhose in them. You know, it's nice traveling over the country like I do and staying in different hotels, but the one we're staying in today is real classy. And it's a little late in life for them to put me in a room where they put me because they put me in a bedroom, in a bed that had a mirror on the ceiling. And I like, when I go to bed, I like to sleep in the nude. Not only that, but I like to get naked. But anyway, I woke up the other morning, I was all stretched out in the bed, and I looked up that mirror and it scared the heck out of me. I thought a naked skydiver was about to land on me. I was in a bar one day, and I drank, I don't know how many beers I must have had. I think I had 19. I drank 19 beers. Not one time did I get off that stool, go to the restroom. And the bartender finally told me, he said, "Sir, I can't serve you anymore because we got to close up and get out of here." And he walked out the door with me. And I started fooling around a little bit, and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, I'm gonna go. I have to go." He said, "Right here?" I said, "No, I'm going to go way over there." Policeman stopped me the other day for what they call a roll, in California, they call it a roll stop. I just up to the corner and then don't see anything coming, you scoot on through. And he pulled me over, he said, "I'm gonna give you a citation for running that boulevard stop back there." I said, "Well, I slowed down." He said, "But the sign says stop, stop. But the sign says stop. You're supposed to stop when you come to those signs." I said, "I know, but I slowed down." He said, "Well, you get out of the car." I got out of the car, and he started hitting me in the head with a billy club. He said, Do you want me to stop or do you want me to slow down?" A friend of mine went to confession one Saturday, and he had a few drinks, and he was walking down the aisle, and the good father was coming up, and he saw him. He said, "Well, my goodness, Joe, how in the world are you? I haven't seen you for a long time." He said, "Well, I've been around, Father, but I decided I better come to confession, and because I've been doing a lot of bad things." He said, "Well, I think it'd be a good idea for you to go home and sleep off this party you've apparently had, and then come back tomorrow, and I'll talk to you then and hear your confession." He said, "You better hear me now, Father. I've been a pretty bad guy." He said, "Well, what have you done? You haven't done anything terrible, have you?" He said, "Well, I stole a few pencils out of the office, and I took a roll of toilet tissue out of the men's room, and I did a couple of bad things." He said, "Well, that's not so bad. You just go on home, and I'll hear your confession tomorrow." He said, "Oh, I'm afraid you better hear. I could go out here and get hit by a truck, and then where would I be?" He said, "Well, you just live around the corner. Just be careful and get home and sleep it off." He said, "Well, okay." The priest said, "Incidentally, you're so anxious to have your confession heard. You didn't kill anybody, did you?" He said, "Did I kill somebody?" He said, "Yes." He said, "No, I didn't kill anybody." He said, "Well, you get on out of here and be careful and go home and sleep it off. I'll hear you tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. He said, "Okay." So as he was walking down the steps, he saw Bill coming up the steps. He said, "Hey, Bill, how are you?" He said, "Hi, Joe. Hi, Joe. How are you?" He said, "I'm all right." He said, "Where are you going?" He said, "I'm going confession." He said, come here, man. He said, what do you want? He said, come here. Come here, man. And he said, he walked up to him. He said, what do you want? He said, you going to the confession? He said, yeah, I go every Saturday. He said, well, let me ask you something. Did you kill somebody? He said, did I what? He said, did you kill somebody? He said, no. Heck no, I didn't kill anybody. He said, well, the heck with it. Let's go get a beer. He's only hearing murder cases today. My brother-in-law Frank was sitting at this bar and he caught cold and he was just having a terrible time. The bartender said, hey, you look like you're catching a real bad cold. And Frank said, well, I think maybe I might be, and I better get home before I get real sick. And so he got up, went out and got in his car, and he was driving his car too, and nobody should do that, when they're drinking. And he got mixed up in a funeral procession, and he didn't know the difference between a funeral and a factory letting out. So, man, he was trying to get out in front of it, and so he come out, and then he turned back in, and he'd come out, and he turned back in, and pretty soon he found himself right behind the hearse. So the hearse pulled in the cemetery, and my brother-in-law went right after him, and he didn't know where he was going, and the hearse pulled up in front of the little chapel there, and my brother-in-law thought, oh boy, we're going in to see a show or something, I guess. So the funeral men got out of the hearse where they usually, and went back to the first car where they usually find the chief mourners, and they opened the door. My brother-in-law was sitting in there, and these guys thought, oh boy, it must have been a pretty close friend that this guy lost. He's taking it real hard. And so they got him out of the car and took him in the chapel, and he was sniffling away, and they sat him down in the front pew where nobody got near him. Everybody saw him as they came in the chapel, and they wouldn't go near him. They didn't want to embarrass him or anything. So pretty soon the pastor came out, and he thought, I guess that's the MC. He's going to introduce everybody. And so the minister the pastor saw him sitting down there, and he thought he'd throw the whole ceremony right in his lap because he's taking it so hard. And so he finally got to that part where he said, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. He who believeth in the Lord shall not perish, but have everlasting life. And then he leaned real close to him. He said, the Lord giveth, and the Lord taketh away. And my brother-in-law stood up and looked around, all these people standing and sitting around his little chapel, and he said, oh, by God, if that ain't fair, I'll kiss your ass. Let's sing a song, so if you don't mind, please stay on your seats, and I'll sing one of my favorite country songs. Country music being my favorite music. So we'll start like this. If you love me half as much as I you wouldn't worry me half as much as you do. when there's no one else around. You only build me up to let me down. If you miss me half as much as I miss you, you wouldn't stay away half as much as you do. I know that I would never be untrue if you only love me half as much as I love you. What's the song? Because of you, there's a song in my heart. Because of you, my romance had its start. Because of you, the sun will shine, stars and moon will make you mine forever and ever, sweetheart. I only live for your love and your kiss. It's paradise to be near you like this. Because of you, my life is now worthwhile, and I can smile because of you. You always want to be the last one in. I'd like to tell you some more funny stories, but if I did, you'd just laugh.